When you joined Spanx, they had 5 employees, and as you mentioned earlier, no business plan.
Right.
So how did you make that transition from a massive company like Coke to this tiny, completely unformed company?
Well, it was really different when I would call people and say I worked for the Coca-Cola company, and when I would call and say I worked for Spanx, click, click, click. They had different ideas about what Spanx might be, but there were so many things that were the same because as a leader, you are your authentic self wherever you are. So whether I was in the huge complex at Coca-Cola or the little duplex at that Spanx started in, where my office was the floor of the kitchen. The same principles of thinking big, starting small, scaling fast, applied in the same way.
So as the brains behind the business plan, what were your initial goals with that plan when you first started in 2002 at Spanx?
That's where my experience at Coca-Cola building brands came, into play, because when I came to Spanx, we were really a product company. Sarah invented the first footless pantyhose, but I was really concerned with, a couple of products not really translating into a sustainable plan for the future. So the first goal was to be a brand, and that meant going from a product to a product line, and then going from product lines to being the leader of a category, and from that to category expansion and brand building. So it was a process that was about understanding current reality and where you are, and setting a vision for the future that was much bigger than anybody could imagine in the little duplex at the time.
Within your first year at Spanx, a bunch of different products were launched. So you had reversible tights, maternity pantyhose. What was your strategy with diversifying the products and expanding the company?
Right. Well, the goal was to have a full hosiery collection, which, believe it or not, when you had one footless pantyhose product, that became really important. But I think the strategy from the beginning was to make sure that the relationship with the woman we were selling to was more important than the transaction, the one single transaction. That product quality was more important than margin, and that the brand that we were creating was more important than the revenue stream. So we started out with that premise, and have built the company on that ever since.
And as the company has grown, how has that strategy evolved?
It really, our strategy in that regard has remained the same, from the beginning, and that really hasn't changed. Products have changed. We've gone into new categories. We've figured out new ways to, our slogan is "Don't worry, we have your butt covered," and we figured out new ways to cover your butt with, velvet and twill and corduroy, and now our latest, denim leggings. But the premise of, every time somebody puts on a Spanx product, one of two things can happen. Our brand can get stronger, or our brand can get weaker. We gain leverage or we lose leverage. And those basic, tenets of how we look at the business and how we want to have a relationship with our customer hasn't changed at all.